In 2019, Sega revealed the Genesis Mini to eager fans worldwide. It had over 40 titles, a few of which were never officially released before. You could even play third-party favorites like Street Fighter II, Castlevania, and Contra. It was also released in familiar packaging and under the proper name for each and every region. You could change many of the ROMs to their Japanese variants. Needless to say, it was a fine product that many people were more than happy with. For $80, it seemed like Sega had a system on the market again, and I think they did an overall excellent job with the build quality and the software lineup. Roughly a year later, Sega released the Game Gear Mini, having yet another chance to strike retro gold. As we all know, the Game Gear has an excellent library of great games, and the prospect of having them on the go on a modern LCD was extremely exciting. Alas, Sega approached this product as a novelty and used the gimmick of its tiny size as a selling point. The thing is, it was comically small. It had a ridiculous and almost completely useless 1-inch screen, and instead of filling it with many great games, they spread out only a few offerings over different colored variants. This was clearly not a serious effort to commemorate the platform, but instead a cheap toy meant to be seen as a collectible. Perhaps most disappointing of all, Sega had completely ignored the chance to release a Master System Mini. With hundreds of titles under its belt, Sega's 8-bit powerhouse was loaded with memorable titles, many of which have no modern way to play them officially. That leaves me wondering, what would I want to see in a Master System Mini? And that's what we're going to talk about today. I've chosen 40 titles plus 2 bonus games for a Sega Master System Mini. I've tried to stay realistic with my picks, but stuck to things I really wanted to see. There's a ton to go over, so let's get started. You know this is gonna be there. Sega owns it and it's unlike any other version available. Afterburner wasn't anywhere near its arcade cousin, but I enjoyed it enough back in the day. It's still forward-scrolling, still really hard, and was Sega's first 4-mega powered cartridge. Alex Kidd was a big part of the Master System experience for many of you. This little dude was as big as Mario in some countries, and his adventure is an important piece of the platform's history. Classic visuals, memorable tunes, and plenty of challenges await newcomers. Not including this would likely cause death threats to Sega of Europe. You're gonna see a few puzzle titles on the Master System Mini, and I think Baku Baku Animal is a great choice. Line up the proper food for each animal to clear the screen. It's simple yet addictive fun that holds up really well in its 8-bit incarnation. Good old Black Belt. This was a reskinned Fist of the North Star done for Western markets. It has side-scrolling action segments that lead into one-on-one fights. Among the classics for this machine, it reigns as one of the most beloved. It also happens to look and sound great and would be an excellent addition to this lineup. The 2-player run-and-gun classic Gain Ground really needs to be here. You must fight your way across multiple battlefields, getting both yourself and your team across to the finish line. I love pretty much every version of this. It's so simple to jump into and enjoy. It may look tame, but I guarantee hours of great gameplay if you just give it a chance. Sega would need to corral the Disney license, but Castle of Illusion is a must-have. It was different from the 16-bit version and every bit as playable. I love the sound and visuals and can replay this for hours. Sega really knew how to make the most of the Disney license, and this here is one of their best Master System releases. Sega's adaptation of Choplifter was a winner. It's challenging, looks great, and is one of the better interpretations of the license. Rescue hostages and get them back to safety. It sounds easy, but the enemy isn't going to make things a cakewalk. They've got tanks, jets, and all sorts of artillery to bring you down. It's definitely a classic. Like Castle of Illusion, Deep Duck Trouble was another excellent platforming adventure. This time it's Donald Duck you must control in an effort to save his Uncle Scrooge McDuck. Absolutely beautiful visuals that really take advantage of the Master System colors. Is it as good as Castle of Illusion? I'll leave that up to you, but it deserves to be here all the same. I was a big fan of Zelda growing up. I loved the exploration and discovery, which made the first NES outing one of my favorite games ever. Sega took that formula and added their Golden Axe license to it, creating the magical Golden Axe Warrior. Here you explore, find items, kill bad guys, and discover a world that just oozes replayability. In some ways, it's a better game than the Nintendo Classic, and a perfect fit for the Master System Mini. During Sega's 8-bit run, Konami wasn't interested in making a Castlevania for them, so they made one themselves. Master of Darkness takes many of the staples from that classic series and makes it its own. Shockingly, it worked, and this ended up being one heck of a solid effort. Cool locations, nice music, and a feel that definitely pays tribute to its source material. Master of Darkness is an adventure all of you need to take. Many of you may have not played Ninja Gaiden on the Master System. It has lived in the shadow of its more popular NES cousin for years, and it's high time that comes to an end. This version of the game plays differently, but is still an epic adventure. You get great visuals and some truly fun ninja action. Give it a chance, and you'll come away with a newfound appreciation for what Sega accomplished here. Outrun was a classic that I loved. While this version was cut back heavily, I still enjoyed the classic tunes and the solid gameplay. It's the first home version I ever played, and that right there makes it a nostalgia bomb. Trying to get to the end was a challenge me and my friends spent many hours with, and I couldn't imagine a Master System Mini without it. At a time when RPGs weren't on my radar at all, there was Phantasy Star. I was enthralled with its world and characters. I was no good with these games back then, but I still played what I could. Years later, I finally beat it, giving me full appreciation of just how good this actually was for its time. It's got a hell of a difficulty barrier in the beginning, but once you understand what you need, you'll get lost in the magic of this sprawling adventure. There's a lot of folks out there that hate on pro wrestling. They say it's overly simple. They say it's light on content. They say there's not enough moves. But man, is it so much fun. I love the cutesy graphics, and slapping on a finisher in the middle of the ring is crazy fun. There are better games to be sure, but pro wrestling is good, clean, easy to pick up fun that can be played with your family and friends. R-Type on the Master System was a top-notch arcade translation. I mean, for the gap in technology, it did a superb job recreating that original experience. And as far as shoot-'em-ups go on the Master System, you'll be hard-pressed to find it superior. Back in the 8-bit days, you had a few choices to play Rampage on a home console, but it was the Master System version that reigned supreme. 2 players, great sound and visuals, and a fantastic FM soundtrack rounded out this to be my preferred way to play, even more so than the original arcade. For me, there was only one place to play Taito's Roston at home, and that was on the Master System. This arcade port basically had you playing a Conan-style action platformer full of enemies and environmental dangers. It was extremely tough, but the world and music really kept you playing. There are, of course, better ways to play the original arcade version today, but as far as Master System classics, it belongs here as much as anything else from Sega. I loved Road Rash on the Genesis, and I am still gobsmacked at how well it turned out on the Master System. I mean, it's a bit slower, but dude, look at that! That's a freaking 8-bit console pulling that off. It even manages to capture the music fairly well. You gotta have at least one racing game here, and this is good stuff all the way around. Shinobi is a Sega classic that was synonymous with the Master System. This arcade port took a number of liberties with that source, but was ultimately better off for it. This was one of my most played games, and it absolutely pisses on the NES edition. To have a Master System Mini without Shinobi is to make the world weep with sorrow. Sonic was huge on the Genesis, but he was also quite popular on the Master System. There are many that even prefer this release. It's not a port of its 16-bit cousin, and instead is an entirely different adventure. Different stages, different bosses, and gameplay that holds up pretty well. Sega loves Sonic, so expect a number of them to be included. Like the first, Sonic 2 on the Master System was a different game from the Genesis release. That alone makes it worth a look, and it too is pretty fun. It was developed by Aspect, who also helped create Super Tempo for the Sega Saturn. Sonic Chaos is one that you may not have played on the Master System. Known mainly as a Game Gear title, this was released in PAL territories and Brazil for the Master System as well. It too was developed by Aspect and had a number of cool features. Tails is playable here and plays differently from Sonic, giving you 2 unique game styles. I thought it was pretty good. Primarily remembered as a Genesis title, Streets of Rage also came to the Master System. It doesn't play quite the same, but for an 8-bit brawler, it more than gets the job done. I think this one would be a nice addition so the genre gets some representation on the Mini. It's also one heck of a nice looking game. Part 2 didn't get quite the makeover the 16-bit version received, but it still plays well enough to earn a spot here. It doesn't have the super moves of the Game Gear, and in many ways doesn't look as nice as the first, but more Streets of Rage is never a bad thing, especially with the genre so weak otherwise. Super Off-Road was a great arcade game, and I think it would be nice to have it here. The Master System release was 2 players and looked the part. There are a bunch of tracks, and racing the tiny trucks around the screen never gets old. This was originally only released in Europe, so it'll give the rest of us a chance to own it on the old Master System. The Wonder Boy games really were popular on the Master System, and I expect a number of them to appear on the Mini. The original was an auto-scrolling platformer based on an arcade game, and it turned out pretty good. I actually preferred this to the Alex Kidd titles and feel it would be a wonderful addition here. Wonder Boy in Monsterland was kind of a mini-action RPG. It's still side-scrolling with lots of jumping, but introduces item shops, magic, and puzzles to solve. It gets overlooked a lot because of the tame presentation, but it's actually quite a good game. It's a pretty radical departure from what we saw in the first, and set the stage for even more changes in future releases. Wonder Boy 3: The Dragon's Trap was a direct sequel to Monsterland, and mainly focuses on platforming and lots of exploration. Many consider it one of the better games for the Master System, so I figured it's gotta be included. Wonder Boy and Monster World took much of the changes found in the previous 2 games and gave it a huge visual overhaul. This is point blank one of the prettiest Master System games I've ever seen. Kill enemies, collect gold, buy items, and conquer the various areas of this vast world. There's still lots of platforming and RPG elements, making this another standout release for the Master System. East: The Vanished Omens was an RPG by Falcom originally. It was ported to the Master System by Sega in 1988. I first played this on the TurboGrafx CD a few years later, and didn't get to this particular version until sometime after that. It's a great game though, and full of things to see and do. It plays quite differently from Phantasy Star, but is still just as compelling. Zillion was an interesting game on the Master System. It was basically a run-and-gun adventure based on a Japanese anime. Aside from shooting down enemies, you also have to find keycards and passcodes to finish the areas. It's actually a fun game once you get used to it, and there aren't many games like it for the platform. Sega hasn't done much with the franchise since the 8-bit days, so this is a fine time to give it some attention. Zillion also had a sequel called Triformation. Securing the license for one would mean the second should be a shoo-in. This one is much more action-oriented and has improved visuals. It's a tough one, but a good time. Ultima 4 feels really strange when you first start, but it's actually a pretty deep RPG with lots to discover. It's incredibly different from the other RPGs on the Master System, and I think it'd be an excellent addition. Sega actually handled the porting duties here, and you don't need experience with any of the other games to play it. I was always blown away by Thunderblade. Whether it was arcade or home, I really enjoyed the visuals. You get top-down and forward-scrolling stages that look pretty special for an 8-bit title. It's tough too, with a relentless onslaught of enemies bearing down on you. At a time when shoot-'em-ups all looked and played the same, Sega made something quite a bit different. I'm not a huge fan of the Master System Space Harrier, but I figure it needs to be here. These types of games were staples at the time for the platform, and no doubt many of you have fond memories of it. Spellcaster here was a reskin of the Japanese Peacock King, a side-scrolling action-adventure game that also served as the previous entry to Mystic Defender on the Genesis. You see a lot of similarities between these titles, and this one is definitely worth a look. I appreciated its presentation as well as its unique adventure elements. There's not a lot like it on the Master System. Part Sonic, part pinball game, I think Sega releases this one for sure. It's not the same as the Genesis version, which gives it even more clout. I think it's a good compromise instead of adding columns or Woody Pop. I'm not sure Sega is willing to pay for the Rambo license, so let's call this one Secret Command. This was an overhead run-and-gun shooter that had two-player co-op. You need to rescue POWs and take down the bad guys. You get access to Rambo's famous explosive arrows and a challenge that should keep you coming back for more. I'm no fan of Psycho Fox, but it needs to be here. It was exceptionally popular in many countries where the Master System sold well. Vic Tokai developed it, who went on to do the mechanically similar Decap Attack. It does have some decent visuals and tunes, and is a good alternative to the Sonic titles. Penguin Land is an underrated gem on the Master System. Here you must get your egg to the bottom of the screen. Sounds easy, but if it falls too far, splat. There are also enemies just jonesing for a chance to smash your unborn prodigy. It takes some real strategy to see this game through to its conclusion. It has over 24 challenging stages that have nearly infinite replay value. Like the Genesis Mini, I'd love to see a couple of bonus games added to this lineup. Tails Adventure was originally a Game Gear exclusive that I'd love to see get a bigger release here. Perhaps an expanded play area with an uptick in resolution. It was a really fine game and I don't think many folks ever got a chance to play it. I'd also like to see the same for GG Shinobi. This was a killer action game that is just begging for another chance to shine. Again, a resolution increase could really open up these stages and give gamers a chance to experience one of the best entries in the entire series. I suppose ultimately we need to discuss the possibility of actually getting a Master System Mini. While it was certainly popular enough in Europe and Brazil to warrant such a product, its dubious position in North America and Japan really does have a negative effect on its legacy. Modern Sega no doubt has looked at the legitimacy of such a project, and I'm not so sure they have come away with a positive attitude. But I think the Master System is more than capable of being a product well worth owning in 2022. This library is full of unique titles that hold their own, and even if Sega wanted to skip any of the third-party releases, I think they still have enough to make this product attractive. It may be true that the Master System's legacy isn't as strong worldwide as, say, the NES, but I think Sega has enough brand recognition and these games have built up enough legacy credit over the years to get plenty of people to buy this product. If Sega took a few extra steps and included FM soundtracks where applicable, and maybe a few high-profile imports that many may have not played, this would be even more attractive. In the end, it's really up to us to let Sega know we want this product. We need to tweet at Sega, we need to Facebook Sega, we need to scream loud enough that Sega recognizes that this is something we would all support. And there really is no excuse as to why it doesn't exist yet. This isn't the Saturn or Dreamcast where quality of emulation is a huge worry. This would be an easy win for both Sega and the retro community as a whole. It's high time we let them know about it. I'm Sega Lord X, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you next time.